introduce Jonathan Ray. He is the co-founder and chief operating officer at Able, and he is here to give us a keynote presentation on AI agents for business users in healthcare, rethinking, scale, and adoption. Please welcome Jonathan Ray.
Thank you very much. Great to be here. Hopefully you got some caffeine. I'll try to keep you awake between now and cocktails. Won't run too long because I don't want to hold any of that up. I'm Jonathan Ray. I'm co-founder of a company called Able. This is our second startup in the space. And actually, if you go back one slide, sorry, didn't realize it already queued. Second startup in the space, our first startup was a company called BeyondCore. We sold that about 9 years ago to a little company called Salesforce. It was actually one of the first Einstein capabilities in the Salesforce ecosystem. We were, really at that time focused on what we're now calling traditional AI, machine learning models, analytics, and so forth. But a lot of the capabilities and technologies have remained constant, just different applications, different technologies. More on my background, started my career designing intelligent automation equipment, went back, got my MBA from the University of Chicago Booth, and left the machines behind, but didn't leave the algorithms behind. Started applying them to my business data and getting outsized returns by letting the data lead my investments. And served me well for a number of years, but was really looking for technologies that might be able to help me go deeper into my data, and actually ended up stumbling into the AI space. Ultimately, my co-founder and I have spent quite a bit of time in the space. He actually wrote a book about 8 years ago, shortly after the acquisition by Salesforce, called AI is a Waste of Money. Now, obviously, we would not be doing a second startup in the space if we actually believed AI is a waste of money, but we do get to see all the good, all the bad, all the ugly, and that's what I'm going to try to convey today. In 20 minutes, I'm not going to be able to go through everything that I might have taught in the HBS course or other things that we've taught in the past, but ultimately, we do get out, we help develop the first MBA program someone was talking about earlier, how MBAs are now getting prepared on how to use AI in the workspace, help put together some of those courses. And yet, MIT just came out with a statistic about a month ago showing that 95% of generative projects fail to deliver value to an organization, right? And that book on the right, it is free on our website if you wanted to go on, register. The content now being 8 years old is a little dated, but the principles still hold true. And fundamentally, at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, business is business. People ask me all the time, how does AI change the fundamentals of business? It doesn't. Business has been the same for hundreds, thousands of years. You have a good or service, you market that good or service, you sell that good or service, and you produce that good or service. That does not change. What is changing with AI is our relationship with information and data, the ability to go in, go deeper, and truly understand what is going on in our organizations. That is really where the change is occurring. But there's another thing that's happening. You all use generative AI, I'm sure, right? It's working its way into pretty much every technology in the world. The problem is when you move that into the enterprise context, we are seeing people have a lot of trouble with that. One of the main reasons is, the first point, generic. Might be a little controversial, but large language models are a consumer technology. Let that sink in for a minute. They have only trained on information that's publicly available on the internet. So people have these great experiences, these great expectations of what generative AI can do. They move them into the business. It has absolutely no concept of what's going on in your business. You're not going to get the same experience you get when you're asking it for a good restaurant in town or things of that sort, that it's seen the information already. This leads to inaccuracy. It doesn't know. It may create a report that looks like $1 million, but there's a good chance the information in it is completely false, right? $1 million look with 99 cents of information is really not what you want, and even worse, hallucination. There's actually a new term out this week. As in this industry, we get new terms almost every day, but the HBR has put out an article as of Monday talking about a new term, work slop. Anybody use Pinterest? If you haven't used Pinterest, log on to it this evening, take a look at it. Almost everything on there is AI generated. It was supposed to be a platform showing people's creative projects, walking others through how to deliver them. Most of the content now is AI slop that you couldn't possibly reproduce. I saw a house the other week that had a waterfall coming out of the second-story porch. It looked awesome, but I'm pretty sure we're not going to do that. That is the course that most organizations are heading on right now, where work slop is starting to take the place of actual work because it's easier. You write a prompt, you send some information to the language model, you get what looks like a great report. Somebody down the line has to clean it up, right? We have to get over that for AI agents and applications to be useful. I'm also seeing a lot of teams building everything from scratch, right? They're using libraries, they're using open source content, but they're cobbling it all together for one particular application. This creates a nightmare, right? From a support standpoint. Generative AI models have a life cycle of about 3 to 6 months. That means every 3 to 6 months, you have to rip the engine out of the car and put a new one in. Unless you've designed a system or process to make that painless, you're going to end up with a lot of applications. You may have heard a few weeks ago, OpenAI transitioned to GPT-5. Killed thousands of applications around the world because people hadn't built them to be flexible, except those new models. That then puts you into a nightmare where you're constantly on a treadmill developing and never actually getting anything into production. This is just fundamentally unscalable. And security is a nightmare. Everybody's got AI governance panels, right? Those are really easy reviews, no scrutiny or time wasted at all going through security reviews, right? Again, if you are building each individual application separately, you're going to be stuck with either a security nightmare or you're going to take forever to deliver any of these applications. It's going to defer or delay those solutions getting out into the real world. All right, what enterprise AI needs to be is tailored. Every single application my team works on, I do head up customer success and our product team, so I am intimately involved with all of my large clients. Every single one of these applications has to be tailored. Now, if you're talking co-pilot type applications, right, summarizing emails, looking through and summarizing PowerPoint presentations, that's kind of like level 1 AI. Right, when you're talking more complicated agents, ones that are going to help you make decisions, really facilitate activities and strategy in your organization, those fundamentally have to be customized to understand what you're trying to achieve, what is the information it's processing, so you can actually deliver something that's useful, not just a whole bunch of work slop. Now, business-led, this is another one that's huge. I have been advocating for years on the role of product management in AI. For some reason, it still doesn't exist. I do have a couple of clients that do have AI product managers, but I highly recommend if you don't have them, find them, because these folks tend to be the bridge between business and technology. You've got a lot of great technical folks. They may understand artificial intelligence inside and out. They very rarely understand the business side of the house, right? You've got to get those two teams talking. I had a meeting years ago where literally business team, data science team from an organization I was working with down each side of a conference table, and they are just screaming at each other, right? Screaming at each other, right? The data science team doesn't understand how business works. The business team doesn't understand that what the data science team built was the greatest solution in the history of ever. They were speaking different languages, right? And you need somebody in that mix to translate that, and you absolutely, absolutely, absolutely have to have the business in the room to have these conversations. Otherwise, it's just a technology that somebody's trying to build a solution because it's cool. You don't need cool. Again, the fundamentals of business have not changed. Unless you are developing a technology that is somehow delivering a better path to market, a better product, a better price point, you are not improving your business, right? And with that, I really want to focus in on how people are applying generative AI. I get a lot of people come to me and say, hey, can I use generative AI to save this team 5 hours a week? Yes, you can. It's not worth it. Don't do it. Why? One, AI slop is a concern, right? You don't necessarily just want a team outsourcing something and not thinking. It's good for people to have their eyes on things. But fundamentally, what I try to encourage organizations to do is think about data, think about information differently in the world of generative AI agents. Because what we have here is a step change in the relationship that we can have with data. What AI does better than anything else that we've seen in terms of technologies before is handle volumes of information that humans cannot possibly process. right? And we can actually leverage that to our advantage because now we can see deeper into what's going on in our organization and solve problems that otherwise weren't solvable. Rapid, I talked about the life cycle of a generative AI model. If you are not running an agile system, if you are trying to waterfall your way into a solution in this space, you are going to fail because the technology is going to change 5 times over before you get done. You have to build a prototype incredibly rapidly. We focus on trying to build prototypes within 48 hours of getting the project scoped and any data supporting information delivered. Because if I ask you to write a spec doc on a generative AI agent, 90% of the room will not be able to because you don't know what to expect. You haven't built out dozens of these. What we prefer to do is build out a prototype. As soon as I put that in your hands, you're going to tell me everything you hate about it. And that's good, right? That's agile, right? Fail fast, iterate, make sure that we're able to get that solution where it needs to be over the course of 30 days, 60 days to get that prototype into production. And then scale, right? Using a common platform, having all of the tooling available at our fingertips so you can actually develop, iterate, and try things out. And also with that, try out 100 ideas, right? If you fail on 95% of them, it's not a bad thing if you fail in a matter of hours or days, right? That really helps prove out what technologies are going to be, or what applications are going to be the most valuable for the business. And critically, using a single platform allows you to ensure security. You get to approve it once and then use that platform throughout. But I want to go a little bit deeper into some of the things I'm seeing in the space and some of the ways we're working to overcome some of these challenges, right? First is a recognition of what language models are good at. Language models are great at communication. They are absolutely wonderful at synthesizing information, right? One of our first solutions in generative AI agents came out about a little over 3 years ago. And I showed it to one of my top experts, data scientist, analyst, business guy, just absolutely a wizard. And I said, is this starting to approach the quality of assessment you give to your customers? He said, no, it's already better. And I had to pause for a second because I have, an absolute unicorn of a human being, somebody who can do things most people in the world cannot. He's saying with 3-year-ago tech that the language model solution, the agent is already better than he is. And he went on to explain why. It's because the language model can look at everything at once. He has to go chart by chart, look for insights, identify patterns, write a summary. The language model looks at every pattern at the same time and can come back and give us exactly what's going on. Now, where they struggle is they don't know your organization. Remember, consumer technology. They know what's on Reddit. They do not know what is going on in your organization. All right, with that as well, hallucinations. This is a very, very great euphemism for BS. If it doesn't know the answer, it's just going to tell you something. It'll even give you sources, it'll give you references, it'll give you data, it will give you all sorts of things. This is back to, a $1 million report with 99 cents of information. It can fake all of that, right? What we've done is we've really focused in on information models. Now, in the space right now, people typically focus in on, one of 3 ways of getting information. One is a natural language query. That's for data. It just writes a SQL query, it executes the query, and then the language model summarizes the output of that. Challenges with that, it's very susceptible to poor metadata. And 2, you've now taken all of this potential, all of this ability for the language model to assess what is going on in your organization, and you've put it behind the ability for a person to ask a perfect question. Right? That greatly diminishes it because now a generative AI solution can't do anything more than you could do in Tableau or Power BI. And that is show you what's going on in the area you chose to focus on. There are also vector databases. I'll go into those a little bit more in a minute. Those tend to be for unstructured data. They help retrieve concepts, pull those back, and then summarize those to answer your questions. And then the third, and my favorite, because it's an absolute coup by the model organizations, the OpenAIs, the Googles of the world, they say, all right, my token limit is huge. You can load thousands of pages of text directly into the language model. Think back to your English homework. What they are proposing you do is for every question you want the AI to answer, have it reread the book, right? That's not how humans work, right? When you did your homework, hopefully you read the book. If you didn't, you just skipped to step 2, which was scan the text and try to find the answer, right? That is a much more efficient solution. The language models love prompt stuffing, where you just throw everything in the prompt, because they get to charge you for a ridiculous number of tokens. We've had customers come to us and say, our AI bill is through the roof already. How do we solve this? We have to be efficient with our relationship with data. This is where the information models come in, right? We use all sorts of different techniques. We've invented a lot of stuff to fill gaps that don't exist in the market today, but ultimately, however you develop your application, you have to have a way to get information into the language model, because again, it doesn't understand your business. This is going to help it identify exactly what's going on, what are the big changes in the business, and ultimately, it can find unknown unknowns this way, because now you have a true agent, a true analyst in your AI agent that's going in, understanding what is going on across the organization, looking across hundreds of KPIs to see where shifts are happening, which regions are growing, which regions are falling, which products are reaching obsolescence, what is going on in your organization that you may not be able to process humanly because you have tens of thousands of SKUs, you have hundreds of thousands of customers, right? These are things that, again, you can allow AI to move you beyond a human scale of what you can keep an eye on, logistics. Anywhere the data is overwhelming, that's going to be a great place to use these capabilities. But statistical models, traditional AI, they don't understand people. They don't understand what's going on. So bringing these two technologies together is incredibly beneficial, because it allows you to get the best of both worlds. Right? And this is how we are delivering these solutions, helping organizations connect their enterprise information into these agents in a way that gets the best insights possible for them. Now, another thing that's important with this, we all know when you get a response from a language model, you should check the references. Show of hands, who checks the references every time they use a generative AI model to make sure it's correct? All right, we've got a couple diligent folks out there. It's a lot of fun, right? You never stop and say, man, I should have just read this thing on my own, right? Why am I using this to go in and make sure that it's not lying to me, right? One of the things I highly recommend is integrate a deterministic loopback mechanism. Make your life easy, right? Some of the things we do as we're developing these applications is put these hallucination double checks in. This is critical. This is not driven by the large language model. We actually tried, early days, we tried to have the language model cite its source. I'm sure you've heard the horror stories of legal write-ups and so forth, citing cases that don't exist. Again, those hallucinations are difficult, right? I would encourage you, any application you build, make sure there is a double checking capability right there. Anytime we're doing analytics, we trace it back to the original information from the data set. We also, with any of our unstructured data, will actually show you the passages that it came from, so you can just hover over it. We give a little blue is true box where you hover and it shows you the reference. Because don't make it hard for people to double check. If you don't have a reference, if you don't know where that information is coming from, you can't trust it. You have to go manually search and figure out what's a hallucination and what's not. You're going to end up wasting about as much time going and reference checking. Maybe it's a little bit helpful to help focus you in on the areas that are important, but was at a conference a few months back and was talking to an individual who went to OpenAI and said, I want a complete analytics solution driven by language models. He said, yeah, it was expensive. Yeah, it took a while. And it's totally useless. Because what it does, language models are terrible at math. They're language models. Are you going to put an English major in your data team? Maybe you are. Maybe you found somebody who can do all things. But in reality, language models are great at language. And statistical models, machine learning models are great at data. Right? Don't expect both to be good at everything, or any to be good at everything. You really have to focus on what they're doing, and then help build the guardrails to allow them to work with humans very, very well. Now, we have all sorts of different applications. Again, data is data, information is information. We work across verticals, but we have use cases and successes in healthcare, retail, both payer-provider, and also in life sciences. And with this, what we start with is, what are the problems in your organization? You come to me and say, I want some generative AI. My CEO says we all have to be AI-driven by the end of the year. I don't have AI for you. You have to have a true business challenge. You have to have somewhere where the data is too dense, too overwhelming, too difficult to process for you to be able to get the maximum value out of these services. Sometimes it is helpful to put together an ROI. Sometimes you just can't, right? Particularly with unknown unknowns. We've helped clients find insights. We actually found one a couple weeks back where the agent came back and said, here is an area where you are spending $12 million a year on supporting these customers. And the business team took a look at it and said, how is that possible? This is our lowest tier of customer. We try to make sure we don't spend any time servicing those accounts because they're our least profitable. Well, the AI went on to explain and said, well, what's happening is you actually took features out of the self-serve experience for your lowest tier customers. They don't have access to your self-serve portal. They don't have access to all of these other capabilities that your full service or your high value customers have access to. And what that means is they call into customer service all the time, and you are spending $12 million per year supporting your least profitable customers. These are the things that unless someone had a hypothesis that that was happening in the organization, you would never find it using traditional agents, traditional capabilities, because again, all that power is gated by your ability to form a hypothesis or ask a question. Pharma as well, all sorts of different use cases that we work with. Everything. I don't love scheduling, but we've done scheduling applications. We do all sorts of different applications, summarizing, understanding what's going on, market context. We've done financial analysis for senior execs. We actually built a bot that would challenge one of the executives with analyst-style questions before they went on to their earnings calls. That was actually one of my favorite because with our security architecture, we had to install it on-prem because that is information we couldn't even have access to. But it was pretty cool having a quiz bot that would go in and challenge the executives and help them with their dry runs based on the challenges and shortcomings that it was seeing in their live data that was about to go public. So I've been talking about Able. What are we? This is my only sales slide. What we do is fundamentally, the blue is our stack. We really focus on where is your data across your organization, focusing in on how do we extract value from your data. This is that bridge between that consumer technology and your information in your organization. We then have the various AI models that we use to go in and interpret that data, turn it into something that's usable for your organization, and then critically specializers. All right, we had an organization we were working with and said we tried to build a solution with a consulting firm. We didn't get any luck because it kept coming in and telling us all sorts of things that we didn't care about. We don't care about what was going on with our customer service team. We're the product team. We want to make sure we understand where our products are succeeding or failing. Right? We had to specialize it so it understood its role. These agents need to know what you want or they're not going to give it to you. And then, however you want to present that out. Do you want it to be charts and graphs? Do you want it to be purely text-based? Do you want to integrate with your existing services, customer-facing applications? Those are all things that can be done. But with that, I see my clock just expired and don't want to hold us up, but I believe I do have a few minutes for Q&A if anybody has any questions. And of course, I'll stick around for the reception as well if you have any questions or want to go into potential applications in your space. Anyone? All right, I got it all in 20 minutes. You're all experts now. Thank you.